Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, coming to you from North Baltimore, Ohio. So wanted to talk a little bit of history first today. Somebody said, hey, are you going to do more history about places you've been to? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So the past few days, I've been in Wisconsin. Then I was in Illinois, which of course is the land of Lincoln, and then Indiana, Michigan. And I've been in Michigan since, I got up there Wednesday morning, but I kind of wintered over for the ice storm. I mean, the ice on my steps and my hood was like legit an inch thick. I had to get the ice off my steps with a ball peen hammer. And then last night I dropped a load in Wixom, Michigan, and I went last night around midnight to pick up a load in Paw Paw. But I had all this really heavy ice from having sat still on my hood, but then a piece broke off, and it was kind of almost like in slow motion. It was like about a 9-inch triangle, like a 9-inch isosceles triangle. What do you call it? The outer boundary would have been like 27 inches, but it was like this big piece, and it kind of popped up and just kind of rotated in the air, like from the air getting pushed around by the front of the truck. Then seemingly in slow motion, it just slammed into the windshield, and I was like, all right, I gotta stop. And so I went out there and I just started banging on the hood, and actually with an open hand, and it just, like, all the stuff fell off, and it fell off so rapidly that it literally filled up the pocket of my hoodie. I got back in the truck, I had all these chunks of ice in there, I had to get back out and get rid of it. So anyway, that's been my story. This load is going to the Walmart in Bedford, PA. So anyway, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, whenever I'm in those states, I invariably think about the 1st Brigade of the 1st Division of the Union 1st Corps during the Civil War in the Army of the Potomac, and that is the famous Iron Brigade. Now, the Iron Brigade was made up of troops from those 3 states. So it was the 2nd, 6th, and 7th Wisconsin Infantry Regiments. And then it was the 19th Indiana. And later they added the 24th Michigan. And the way the brigade got its name is that during the Antietam campaign at Turner's Gap, Joseph Hooker, who was then the 1st Corps commander, you remember Hooker's troops later fought in the cornfield and during the Battle of Antietam, but this is like these several sharp engagements leading up to September 17th of 1862, and these troops were fighting, and Hooker had gone to McClellan and it said, what are my orders? And McClellan had been watching these troops just like pound the Confederates and force them back up the mountain. And he's like, well, whose troops are those? And he said, oh, those are the Westerners. Because remember, I've talked about how Ohio was called the Western Reserve. So Wisconsin was way west, right? Like, it was way out there, Wisconsin to somebody from the East Coast was like, maybe like Wyoming or Idaho would be to somebody from the East Coast today, way out west. So, and even Michigan was the West. So anyway, and so McClellan said, well, those guys must be made of iron. And that's how the nickname of the Iron Brigade came about. And the other thing that was unique about the Iron Brigade, other than their cool name given to them by McClellan, was the fact that they did not wear the standard Civil War kepi hat, which is based on a French design. So the hat that like crushed down in the front and it's got a little brim. They wore what are called the Hardy hats, Hardee, like the restaurant Hardee's. And they were these black hats with kind of a stovepipe. They weren't too tall. They weren't like stovepipe like Lincoln wore. And they had a little bit more of a brim, but it was all the way around. And so they were also known as the Black Hats. And they fought in basically every major engagement in the East. And at Gettysburg, and by the way, these guys never didn't acquit themselves well. They stood up to Stonewall Jackson's brigade at 2nd Manassas when really the northern troops under Pope got routed. But the Iron Brigade was not part of that. They were just like, hey, we're here, we got a job to do and we're gonna do it. And same thing at Antietam, same thing at Gettysburg. So at Gettysburg in the first day, Major General John Reynolds is the corps commander. He spurs ahead of his element, which was three Union Army corps, right? So he had the 1st, I think, the 1st, the 6th, and the 11th. And anyway, so guess what troops get up there first? That's right, the 1st Brigade of the 1st Division of the 1st Corps. And they meet the Confederates coming down Chambersburg Pike from the west. And that's Henry Heth's division of the Army of Northern Virginia. And immediately the Confederates knew this was not going to be very fun, because as soon as they saw those black hats, those black Hardee hats, they knew who they were fighting. And they knew that these guys were not, amateurs. They were tough. They took casualties and stood their ground. You were not going to just run these guys off the field. So anyway, I just have a lot of respect for the Iron Brigade and units like that. It's part of history, but it's also, if you're from those states, and you had ancestors in those brigades, they did some good stuff. It's a lot to be proud of. So anyway, so next segment here on the show today is the AITA. And if you don't know what that means, it means, am I the asshole? So I stopped just to get a soda, actually, at a Love's in Marshall, Michigan. And, there were a bunch of trucks and, at the fuel islands and stuff. So when I pull up, I notice that there's one of those road construction barrels in front of one of the pumps. So I'm like, okay, I pull up, by the barrel, because I'm like, I'm not going to pump any fuel. Then I'll be out of the way of people that do need to get fuel, because you can't use this particular lane. And the thing is, right, I am not in between the pumps. I am back from the pumps. And there's nobody in between the pumps, and there's nobody in front of the pumps. So I go inside. I actually didn't, I had to take a head call. Got me a shower, so I could do that. And then got my soda, and I was back out. But it still was like 9 minutes. Not that really matters. But so anyway, I come out and I realize there's a dude lined up behind me. But, I'm very confident he could tell that I was not between the pumps. And it would be weird for somebody to park their truck that far up, but yet not between the pumps. It's not like I was an entire truck length back, like I just had to really go bad and I ran inside and somebody pulled away, or 2 trucks pulled away. I was up far, but not between the pumps. So I walked back to him and I said, hey man, I said, this pump is out of service. And I said, there's a barrel up there I just pulled up by. So he is angry and slams his door and backs up. So then I was like, because now there are people all, behind me and everything. And so rather than try to back out, I was like, well, I'll just move the barrel out of the way, slightly out of the way. I'll pull through and I'll put the barrel back. So while I'm doing that, another guy comes up behind me. Now, I kind of maybe admit that he might have been confused. The other guy was just not paying attention. And that's the other thing, right? Like, people will sit there and not get out of their truck and investigate. You know how truckers are, right? They'll be like, oh, I'm gonna like, they'll park as close as they can to a building, or they won't get out. They'll drive into a place that they can't really get out of instead of just walking up there, But anyway, so the first guy was mad, he left, and so I pulled the barrel out of the way. Now, mind you, the guy behind me could probably see what I was doing if he was paying attention, because I pulled the barrel out on the driver's side. I set it there for a second. I pulled through and stopped. And I didn't even go all the way through the pumps because the barrel was in front of the entrance to the pumps. And then I go and I move the barrel back. Well, then he is angry with me because I left it how I found it, basically. And he's like laying on his air horn. And I'm like, dude, what do you want me to do? Okay, all I did was try to park out of the way. And you're angry with me because Love's pumps don't work, right? Like, how is that my fault? Did I trick you? Did I say something to you? I mean, I could have just sat there, and done 30, and what are they going to do, right? And so as I'm pulling away, I'm just like, I guess they'll figure it out. But I don't think I did anything wrong. But I'm happy to hear your opinion. Like, did I trick these guys? Did I hide the ball? I don't think so. Anyway, so that's that. So the last thing I want to talk about is, somebody said something to me the other day about, because I've said on the channel that I own stock in Union Pacific Railroad, and somebody said, well, hey, what's up with this derailment in East Palestine, Ohio? They thought I owned Norfolk Southern stock, and I said I used to own Norfolk Southern, but I don't anymore, and that's been several years since I sold that. But they were talking about, I said, first of all, derailments happen all the time. I said, but, everybody's pissed at Norfolk Southern right now. And I understand that, right? But this isn't the first derailment. And, in a lot of derailments, people die. Like, either train crews die or people where there's a derailment die. There was a train that broke loose a few years ago in Canada and killed around 40 people because it set a whole damn town on fire. It burned the whole town down because the train got loose and crashed, right? Like the brakes, weren't set right or whatever. I mean, and here's the reality of the situation, right? In America, railroads have been here. If you go anywhere west of Pennsylvania, if you just drew a line from the western side of Pennsylvania south, if you go anywhere west of there, almost, the railroads were around before most of the towns were there. And many, many, many towns in America exist. Their whole existence is because of railroads. And for example, there's some people in Iowa, because of the Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern merger that's being proposed. They're like, oh, we're going to go from 10 trains a day to 23 trains a day, and we don't like that, and we need to put a stop to this. And I'm like, your town is close to the railroad tracks because your town was not even there when these railroads were built, If you don't want to live by trains going by all the time, then don't buy in a town that was founded because of the railroads, you know? And so, you know, I that's kind of my take on the whole thing in East Palestine. I'm not saying Norfolk Southern doesn't have liability. I'm sure they do, and I'm sure it'll get all worked out by the courts. But here's what I was thinking about, just generally speaking. And, you know, a lot of people, and I'm going to tell you right now, the system is rigged against the little people. And, you know, I've seen it personally as an attorney, like representing big banks and you know, other creditors, mortgage companies and stuff. The system is rigged against the little people. It's rigged against the people that do all the heavy lifting in America, right? It's always been that way. 200 years ago, it was rigged against anybody that was black and poor white people, indentured servants, however they got to the United States. Slavery went away, but then it was still rigged against black people, but also against working people. And it's always been that way, and it continues to be that way. So, how can you stick it to the man? Well, one way is to just go, you know, one way is to just go medieval and, you know, I don't know, go shoot up a workplace. But that really doesn't stick it to the man. It just sticks it to the people that are workers there. Now, I guess maybe if you went in the boardroom at a Fortune 500 company and wasted everybody, that would be sticking it to the man. But really, the man would just find another 23 board members and, you know, carry on smartly. The company wouldn't fail. You know, nothing like that. The CEO would still get a bonus, and everybody feel sorry for him because he was in the can when you shot up the boardroom, but he, you know, he's traumatized. So how do you stick it to the man and just live your life? And the answer is this. So, you know, those people in East Palestine, they're going to get checks from Norfolk Southern. But guess who else is getting a check from Norfolk Southern this year? All their stockholders, right? The company that I own, Union Pacific, they spent about $500 million last year on, you know, providing benefits and giving additional stuff to their employees. But guess how much they returned to shareholders like me? Like $6 billion. These are multi-billion, and part of it was because of stock buybacks, right? Like if a company thinks that their stock price should be higher, you know what they do? They just buy their own stock and drive the price up. Sorry, I'm like rolling a window down here. It's getting a little warm. And, you know, and that's money that doesn't go to the employees or to the communities that they, you know, haul stuff through 24 hours a day. It you know, they build a few things here and there and everybody calls them nice. But the truth of the matter is the people that are getting rich are the executives and the stockholders, right? So like when that Union Pacific guy gets on a train and goes to work and, you know, does his job, he's helping me make money. So if you look at like, instead of saying I hate these companies, if I was in East Palestine, I would buy Norfolk Southern stock, right? Why? Because this derailment is nothing to them, right? If they spend $1 billion on this, that's about 5% of what their revenue this year is going to be. In fact, I might be way low. Their revenue might be more like 30, 40 billion. I don't know. But it's not going to be a significant hit to them. Like there have been worse derailments and they're going to chug right along, no pun intended, right? Who's making money at their stockholders? But here's the other thing that being a stockholder of a company gives you. It gives you the right to go to their annual stockholder meeting and actually be in the same room as the CEO, the board of directors. Can you imagine if like 100 and 200 people from East Liverpool, Ohio, all bought 10 shares of Norfolk Southern stock and all showed up and wanted to speak at the annual meeting. Because typically shareholders, even if they own a little tiny bit of stock, they're given the right to address issues. They're given the right to vote on issues. They could vote against the CEO's pay package. They could vote against all the directors. Are they going to oust anybody? No, but they can still have a voice. The other thing you can do is to stick it to the man is go after the large institutional shareholders too. There are a lot of pension funds and mutual funds and stuff like that own stock in these companies. In fact, when it comes to railroads, it is kind of like the Monopoly game. You know how somebody always tries to get all 4 of the railroads in Monopoly? A lot of these stockholders in these companies are all the same, right? And I'm excluding BNSF because that's Berkshire Hathaway, that's Warren Buffett's gig. But anything that you're unhappy about when it comes to a corporation, whether it's how you think prices are too high at Walmart, or you think like fuel prices are too high. You know what? If you think prices are too high at Walmart, buy Walmart stock. I just saw a thing the other day. If you'd put $1,000 in Walmart stock 10 years ago, you'd have like almost $3,000 worth of stock today, right? That's how you can stick it to the man by just quietly going about your business and retiring wealthy and using their labor. You use their labor to even the playing field. You use their labor to make money. The CEO of Union Pacific Railroad is working for me, right? He's working for me. The CEO of Coca-Cola working for me. Okay? Even companies, if you drive a truck, right? In fact, I'm not supposed to say this, but I have Coca-Cola products in my truck right now, right? Think about it. I own Coca-Cola stock. Coca-Cola pays me a dividend. And by the way, and this load pays pretty good. It's like well over $2.50 a mile. It's like double dipping, right? I'm making a living off of this company that's selling a product to Walmart, right, where I'm gonna deliver, and it's crazy. It's like I'm making money off of Coke, and if I own Walmart stock, I'm making money off of Walmart, and I'm making a living given the stuff that the company I own a piece of is selling to another company that I could own a piece of. You see how this works? Like back in like 07, 08, when fuel prices were like insane, like everywhere you went, gas was over $5 a gallon. And diesel was like super expensive back then. Guess who I bought? ExxonMobil. I couldn't do anything about the price of fuel. But ExxonMobil stock just kept climbing and they paid a dividend and stuff. And then when prices came back down, I sold it, right? Probably needed the money, I don't know. But in understanding the game and getting good at playing it, right? In your own little way. You don't have to be super rich to do this, right? I talked about Tyson the other day. You think Tyson's going anywhere? No. Maybe you don't like how much they charge for chicken nuggets or for Jimmy Dean's sausage, but Tyson just bought another like sausage meat company that has 500 employees. Tyson's just getting bigger. You know, Tyson's getting bigger. Walmart's closing a few stores because they're unprofitable, but the company's going to be profitable, even though their stock is probably down a little bit this year. And these are just a few examples. You know, like the Motley Fools, they have a maxim that is buy what you know. Buy stock in companies that you do business with. I drink Diet Coke like like Diet Coke is more important to me than oxygen, okay? And, so why not own stock in that company, right? I shop at Walmart all the time. Why wouldn't I want to participate in their upside, right? Instead of just handing them money, I got my hand out. Give me my dividend, right? So all of this can be, you can use it to your advantage. If there's a company that you go to all the time, like Starbucks, you're willing to pay $6 for a plain old cup of coffee. Why don't you want to participate in the fact that all these other knuckleheads are lined up behind you paying $6 for that cup of coffee? Buy Starbucks stock. Buy what you know. And here's the other last piece of advice I'm going to give you on stocks and investments and stuff. Peter Lynch, who is the famous guy from Fidelity Investments, right? He was a big player there. He said, when you're thinking about buying something, if you can't come up with a way to explain to a second grader why that's a good investment, then it's probably not a good investment. If you can't say to a second grader, well, everybody goes to Walmart, right? That's why I want to own that company, because every time somebody walks in Walmart, I make a little bit of money. Or McDonald's, every time you see a car going, every time mom buys you a Happy Meal, I'm making money off of it. Easy, right? So anyway, stick it to the man. Stick it to the man in your own little way, and just be content. And we'll go from there. Bye.